So hello there, and welcome back to another Night of the Movies podcast. And in this podcast, I talk all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, in anticipation for my most anticipated movie of this year, in which is of course Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, I'm once again talking about Indiana Jones. But I'm not talking about any of the 4 Indiana Jones movies though. No, instead I'm talking about young Indiana Jones once again, like I did about 2 weeks ago now. Was it 3 weeks ago now? Yeah, it was 3 weeks ago now. And I'm talking about the fact that it's still not on Disney Plus. Well, at least in the UK anyway. But before I do that, I should say what I say at the start of every podcast I do, that if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello there to my viewers. But heck, you prefer listening to podcasts rather than watching them, then you can also listen to the podcast audibly on Spotify and Night of the Movies on that platform. And if you are already listening on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also podcast out visually on my YouTube channel and Night of the Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, wherever you may be watching or listening to podcasts, don't forget to like and subscribe, if you enjoy the podcast, of course, and also give me some feedback on things to improve on in future podcasts, because there's always things to improve on. And also, I should say, it's the ongoing saga of hay fever. Yes, if you've been following my podcast for about a week or so now, you'll know that I spoke about my troubles with hay fever in my podcast on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and those troubles have continued. I didn't really talk about my problems with hay fever in my podcast on Elemental, which I realised, by the way, I got that podcast out 2 weeks before Elemental actually came out, which is, kind of crazy. But anyway, yes, I didn't really talk about my hay fever problems in that podcast, but they're still going on. So if I sound a bit bummed up in this podcast today, that's why. I also apologise if I sniffle throughout this podcast. I can't control that. It's because of hay fever. I'm also feeling a bit under the weather because of hay fever as well, because that's what hay fever does to you, and that's one of the reasons I hate the summer. Also, I've been swimming this morning, and it makes me feel good. It releases a lot of, I don't know the right word I'm looking for. It releases a lot of energy, I suppose. It makes me feel good after being swimming. I feel good after being swimming, but also I sometimes have fuzzy thinking once I've been swimming as well, because that's what swimming does to you. So I do apologise if some of the points I'm making in this podcast today don't fully make sense, because that's what swimming does to you, and that's what hay fever does to you. But other than that, this should be a great podcast and be very entertaining to watch and or listen to. So let's talk about the fact that the Young Indiana Jones series is still not on Disney Plus, at least in the UK. I don't know for other countries, although I looked on a Reddit chain this morning, and according to that Reddit chain, it is not on Disney Plus in the likes of the US and Canada as well. But I live in the UK, so I only really know for certain that the Young Indiana Jones series is not on Disney Plus in the UK, even though about 3 or so weeks ago now, Lucasfilm said that all 4 Indiana Jones movies and the Young Indiana Jones series would be coming to Disney Plus on May the 31st. But that hasn't happened. I mean, all 4 Indiana Jones movies, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom, Last Crusade, and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull are all on Disney Plus. But the Young Indiana Jones series is not. And that made me look like a big fool, because like I said, about 3 weeks ago, I did a podcast on the fact that the Young Indiana Jones series was coming to Disney Plus, and here was my guide to the Young Indiana Jones show. What episodes are the best, what episodes you should miss out, where you should start, and how the show ends, and the likes of all that. But that's pretty much all useless, at least for now. I do think the Young Indiana Jones series will eventually end up on Disney Plus, but I also think that they've missed their market. I think they missed the beat here, to really get audiences excited for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, in the new Indiana Jones movie, in a stronger way, because if you had the Young Indiana Jones series on Disney Plus already in most territories, and I don't know for certain that they don't, but if you had the Young Indiana Jones series on Disney Plus, you could have people who, enjoy any of the Indiana Jones movies, any of the main 4 Indiana Jones films, watching the Young Indiana Jones series for the first time, discovering it, and then getting excited, more excited than they have been, for the new Indiana Jones film, because they're seeing all of Indiana Jones' adventures, whether he's played by Sean Patrick Flanery, whether the character is played by Sean Patrick Flanery, or whether the titular character, I'm even saying that word correctly, the titular character, that's the right way to say the word, or whether the titular character is played by Harrison Ford. You could have watched all these amazing adventures, and now the Young Indiana Jones series, when it eventually comes onto Disney Plus, I do think it's not going to get the same response that it might have if it went on before the release of the new Indiana Jones film, because from the sounds of it and from the looks of it, it's not actually going to come on Disney Plus until after the new Indiana Jones movie has come out. I don't know that for certain, but that's what it sounds like. And the fact that the Young Indiana Jones series isn't on Disney Plus has made me look a bit of a fool, because I did that whole big guide to the Young Indiana Jones series about 3 weeks ago now, and the thing is, I was so proud of that podcast. That is one of the only podcasts that I've been really proud of. Sometimes when I finish a podcast, I'm not so proud of it, I'm going to admit, but that podcast, I was overjoyed. It was like, I am proud of that podcast. And I was saying in that podcast, it's coming out on May the 31st. The Young Indiana Jones series will be available on Disney Plus on May the 31st. And then it wasn't. Of course it wasn't. So, this is an add-on. I've literally just finished filming and recording the podcast on the fact that Young Indiana Jones is still not on the Disney Plus in the UK. And I also wanted to mention that I remember putting on Disney Plus, loading Disney Plus up on May the 31st, expecting to see Young Indy on there in all of its glory, and my disappointment was, well, it was apparent, to say the least. I was very annoyed about that. But I just wanted to mention it and throw it in there as a little add-on. Anyway, back to the podcast. Lucasfilm lied to me, and even if you look on Lucasfilm's website now, it says Young Indiana Jones show, or it said a couple of weeks ago that it was coming to Disney Plus on May the 31st, and I think if you look now, it says it's on there, but it's not on there. It's not on Disney Plus, and that's annoying, because I really want people to discover this show, because even people I know who are fans of the first 3 Indiana Jones movies, and they don't mind the 4th, but they're not huge on it. Even people who are fans of previous Indiana Jones films, they didn't know this show existed. One of my best friends is a mega fan of Indiana Jones, and he didn't know this show existed until I told him about it about 2 years ago. And it's a shame, because I really think that it could have caught on with an audience and potentially had some sort of revival. I mean, I know that's wishful thinking, I know that, and the chances are, even if it did go on to Disney Plus before the release of the new Indiana Jones movie, it wouldn't have got some sort of revival. But it might have got some sort of new life on there, similarly to how Friends did when it went on Netflix. I'm not saying that, it would have got the same response to when Friends went on Netflix. When Friends went onto Netflix, that was crazy. The show, Netflix paid how much to keep Friends on Netflix? It was crazy. Yeah, it's really, really something. And I'm not saying it would have got the same response as that, but it might have got some response. So it may have got this new love for a show that seems to be mostly forgotten about. And I know that apparently the Young Indiana Jones series is on Paramount Plus. But in the UK, as far as I'm aware, and I might be incorrect, and apologies if I am, do correct me if I am incorrect, but as far as I'm aware, we don't get Paramount Plus in the UK. I know you get them in the US, I know you get the streaming service in the US, but we don't get it in the UK. So saying something's on Paramount Plus to me doesn't really mean anything. I wouldn't mind getting Paramount Plus, but I don't think we have that opportunity in the UK. And, there's a large part of me which is annoyed about the fact that the Young Indiana Jones series still isn't on Disney Plus in the UK. But if I'm being really honest, and I am being, there's a small part of me which is kind of happy about it as well, because now the show is keeping its somewhat cult status, because it is a fan favourite show from what I'm hearing. If you're a huge Indiana Jones fan, you know this show exists. If you're not, then you might not necessarily know the show exists. If you're not a huge Indiana Jones fan, if you're just a fan, if you're just a general fan of the Indiana Jones series, there's nothing wrong with that, but if you're just a general fan of the Indiana Jones series, like many people I know, you might not know this show exists. And I like the fact that this show, at the moment, because it's not on Disney Plus, still has a somewhat cult appeal, because, you can only really buy this show via DVD, it sounds like. That's how you can only watch the show, and you can buy it on Amazon. It's not too cult. It's not too culty when you think about it. You can buy it on Amazon. It's only like 16 quid or whatever, and you can easily get it within the next week or so. But at the same time, though, I don't think many people know that. I don't think many people know that. And so I like the fact that the show still has a kind of a cult appeal. I say kind of, because I don't know if it definitely does. But you know what? I bet it does. I bet it, if you really sat down, looked at the definition of cult, and looked at, the audience that this show got and the fans it has now, it probably would have a cult fan base, if you understand what I mean. And I like the fact that I am still part of that cult fan base. Well, I like to think I am. And also, I like the fact that the show is still a cult property, in that it has this cult fan base following it. But at the same time, no, I really wish it was just on Disney Plus. I really do. I said that, I said all that stuff about, I'm glad it's still a cult show and everything like that. It's still got this cult following and all that jazz. But if I'm being honest, I was just playing devil's advocate there. I really wanted this show to be on Disney Plus already, so people watching this channel and people who just didn't know that the Young Indiana Jones show existed could watch it on Disney Plus and be enthralled by it, like I was when I was a kid growing up this show and watching it every Sunday. That's what I used to do with my dad and my brothers. I used to watch this show every Sunday, and it was just an absolute delight to. And like I said before, I used to be enthralled by it. I really was. So many episodes I was just captivated by, and I love this show. I really do. It's one of my favourite TV shows. And it's not in the same league as Succession or Sopranos and things like that and those shows. But at the same time, though, I think it's a great show because it feels like an extension of, sorry, I said extension, I don't know what extension is, but it feels like an extension of the Indiana Jones movies. Like the TV show was made in the mid-90s, a couple of years after Last Crusade was released. Last Crusade was released in 1989, it's the third Indiana Jones film, which is centering around Indy and his father. And one of the things I really love about the Young Indiana Jones show is how it puts that relation between Indy and his father at the centre of it in so many episodes, and how it builds up for the payoff to be in Last Crusade. You do see a lot between Indy and his father in the Young Indiana Jones show, but the payoff is still Last Crusade, and it makes that payoff in Last Crusade, between Indy and his father in that film so much better. The whole stuff with the grill and everything like that in that movie is so much more powerful because you've seen all the stuff that's gone beforehand with those two characters in the Young Indiana Jones show. And also, I love how so much of this show is just real and it's practical, and they don't rely on CGI like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull did. They couldn't really rely on CGI too much because CGI wasn't at the same place it wasn't at the same place it is nowadays. And I do think if the Young Indiana Jones series was made today, it wouldn't have that same production quality, in my opinion. There's so many battle sequences in the trenches and whatnot in this show which are just shot real and practical and everything like that. So much of the trench sequence in this show are amazing to watch because of how they orchestrated those trench sequences, how they staged those sequences. You're watching this and you're going, yeah, this would be made on TV nowadays. The production quality is through the roof. It is something else. And the musical scores as well fit perfectly alongside the John Williams scores for all four Indiana Jones movies. And I think that Sean Patrick Flannery does a great job playing a young Indiana Jones in the show as well. He really fits that persona as this impulsive young male that you get to see, at the start of Last Crusade, although River Phoenix decided not to return to play young Indy in the young Indiana Jones show. So what he got instead is Sean Patrick Flannery playing a young Indy, and he does a great job though. He is so great to watch in the show, and he just there's so much energy with him and so much charisma, and he's always a bit agitated in the show, much like Indy is in all four main Indiana Jones movies. And I love this show so much, and there's so many episodes I love that I wish people could watch now, like the episode The Mystery of the Blues, which is great, and the episode The Scandal of 1920, which is outrageously enjoyable to watch. The Trenches of Hell, which is one of my favourite TV episodes, period. And then you also get the episode titled Spring Break Adventure, which you see Indy join the Mexican Revolution in, and also the thing is about Spring Break Adventure, that was actually referenced in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, because he does, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, and I'm not sure if I do because I haven't seen Kingdom of the Crystal Skull in about a year, I need to watch it again before I do a podcast on it in the next couple of days, but if I remember correctly, Indy does reference the fact that he joined the Mexican Revolution in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. But yeah, I love Spring Break Adventure. I love Sweet Song. I mean, Love's Sweet Song, that's the title of the episode. It's a melodramatic episode. It's a sentimental episode, but that episode's really grown on me. I don't care what anyone says. I love that episode. The first half of Demons and Deception, I think it's thrilling, and I love... what the other episodes? I can't think of the top of my head. Luckily, I jotted them down here. I just haven't actually got to it on the piece of paper, the document that I'm reading off. The Phantom Train of Doom. Such a great episode. Attack of the Hawkmen, when you see Indy flying people in aircraft and taking pictures of German aircraft during World War I as well. Espionage Escapades. I love that episode. It's got Timothy Spall in. It's directed by one of the Monty Pythons. I forget who off the top of my head. Terry, what's his name? Terry Jones, that's it, Terry Jones. Yeah, he directed the episode, and he's also in it. Also, you get, like I've already mentioned, Demons of Deception, the first half, that's great, and Daredevils of the Desert, the Australia episode, and there's so many other great episodes of Young Indy, which I just wish were available. I wish they were available. And I love, one of the things I really love about the Young Indy show as well is how you get some episodes which just have one contained story because they were shot like one TV movie, because they were shot like a TV movie, and then you get some episodes which have two 45-minute stories because that's how they were shown when they're on TV. So they get a 45-minute episode, and then they get another 45-minute episode like a week later when it came out on TV. But then when they put the show onto DVD, they put those two episodes together and reshot some stuff, so there'd be like a bridge sort of story between both stories. And I love that, because if you're not a big fan of the first 45-minute story in a Young Indy episode, you can just wait, and 45 minutes later you'll be watching the same episode and the story may be better or maybe worse. It's all subjective. And I love though how you get two 45-minute stories in some episodes, and then some episodes have some great 90-minute stories, like The Scandal of 1920. That has one story that it's outrageously enjoyable to watch, but then you also get episodes like Trenches of Hell, which have two 45-minute stories when Indy's in the trenches, and then when Indy is trying to escape from all these prisoner war camps. You see two different 45-minute episodes. It's essentially two different 45-minute episodes in one episode, and it is thrilling, and people don't have the chance to watch it because it's not on Disney Plus. It's annoying that it's not on Disney Plus. It's really annoying, because also I want my podcast to become useful. I'm afraid if the longer it takes for the Young Indiana Jones series to get onto Disney Plus, the more people forget about the fact that I did a whole podcast on my guide to the Young Indiana Jones series, soon to be coming on Disney Plus. Because for all I know, it's coming onto Disney Plus in 2 years' time. I just don't know, and I can't find any concrete information because no one, from the sounds of it, the majority doesn't really care about what it's coming to Disney Plus, but I care. I care when Young Indiana Jones is going to come in here. I'm losing the will. I'm losing the will to speak. I care when young Indiana Jones goes on Disney Plus. I don't know if you can tell I do. You can see how worked up I'm getting on this podcast today. And yeah, I love this show as well, which is one thing I haven't really talked about, although I did mention in my other podcast on Young Indy, because it is like Doctor Who, minus the sci-fi element. Like if you know Doctor Who, you'll know that each episode's sort of its own entity. Each episode is sort of its own entity. It has a self-contained story, and you can just jump in at any point with Doctor Who, or you can watch Doctor Who as one long series, and there's that sense of continuity, there's this underlying story, or you can just jump in Doctor Who like series, 7, episode 2, and it'll probably be its own self-contained story, or be a two-parter. You get the point I'm making. And if you're not a fan of Doctor Who, though, because of the sci-fi element, I know some people that aren't, Young Indy doesn't have that sci-fi element, mostly. There's a bit of sci-fi references in the show. Not on the same level as Kingdom of Crystal Skull, though, when you actually see aliens, but there are some sci-fi references in the show, but it's not a sci-fi show. That's the point I'm making. It's not a sci-fi show. And I like the fact that each episode, it's its own self-contained story. I mean, like I spoke about already, there's sometimes episodes where there's 2 stories in one episode, but each episode is its own entity. And it is one of those shows where you can start with, Series 1, Episode 7. Don't watch it again, just want to reiterate this, don't watch it, when Indy is about 9 years old, because those episodes aren't any good. Jump to when he gets into his teens and he's played by Sean Patrick Flanery. That's when the series finds its footing. If you start there, and if you watch the episode, you watch all 3 series of the show, because that's how I watched them, as 3 series, and that's why the DVD with me into 3 volumes. If you don't know what I'm talking about, watch my other podcast or listen to my other podcast on Young Indy. If you watch all the episodes from Series 1, Episode 7, there is a continuing story with Young Indy, and his relationship with his father, and his relationship with Remy, and also his relationship with his old school teacher, who I'm getting off the name of on the top of my head right now. Even so, I only watched the episodes with her about 3 weeks ago now. There is a continuing story going throughout the whole show, but also each episode is its own thing, like Doctor Who, minus the sci-fi element, which is one thing I really, really adore about this show. And also, I adore Sean Patrick Flanery's performance as Young Indy, and I like the fact that the show has a cameo by Harrison Ford, playing Indy at the age, I'm going to guess, 50 in the show. That's what age I think Indy is meant to be when he appears in this show, in the episode Mystery of the Blues, as a cameo. He's playing an older version of Indy that we last saw in Last Crusade. And I love the fact that you get Harrison Ford in the show, because it's almost like he's putting his stamp of approval on this series. And for people who didn't know about Harrison Ford's appearance in the show, imagine what that would have been like. For people who were excited to watch his reappearance as Indiana Jones one last time in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Imagine if you were excited for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. You didn't know about the show though, and then it showed up on Disney Plus, and you watched it, and then you got more excited for it. You got more excited for the new Indiana Jones movie. I think Lucasfilm really missed a beat not putting the show on Disney Plus already, at least in the UK. I don't know for other territories, but it sounded like it's not available in the likes of the US and Canada. I mean, that's from what I've read on a Reddit chain, and you should never really trust Reddit now saying that, but I really wish it was available. And I love this show, and I wanted to do a Young Indy. I wanted to do another Young Indy podcast after my podcast on Last Crusade, because it was released after Last Crusade, and it is, in my opinion, still canon to the Indiana Jones story. And I'm hoping, and I know this might be a bit too much to ask for because of the audience that this show has, but I'm hoping there is some reference to Young Indy in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, because there was in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, although saying that, I understand why there was in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, because George Lucas was very much involved with the story in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. He was still very much involved in that movie, and he was an executive producer on the Young Indiana Jones series, and you feel his input, by the way, not in a bad way. It's a pre-Phantom Menace. This was when George Lucas was still somewhat grounded, and then you get to Phantom Menace, and it's like George Lucas has been living in a bubble, and he's just come out of his bubble, and it's not working. And I'll talk about that a bit more in my Kingdom of the Crystal Skull podcast coming in the next couple of days. But yeah, I love how you do get a reference to young Indy in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but I'm gonna guess you don't get a reference to young Indy in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I don't know for certain, but I'm gonna guess you don't get a reference though, because George Lucas, from what I've heard, he was slightly involved in the production of the new Indiana Jones movie, but he wasn't involved as much as he was in the production of the previous 4 Indiana Jones films. And so, you know, maybe that's why it's not on Disney Plus in the UK, because there's no references in the new Indiana Jones movie. There's no references to the Young Indiana Jones show in the new Indiana Jones movie. I don't know. But I do feel that it is a huge missed opportunity, because people could have discovered more Indiana Jones adventures leading up to the release of Indy's final, or so-called final, quote-unquote, adventure. They could have experienced great TV the same way I did when I was growing up with this show, and it's a huge shame. It really is. And if you are interested in watching the show, especially before the release of the new Indiana Jones movie, I'm sorry to say, but you might be a bit too late. But also, if you are interested, though, in checking out the show, I'm pretty sure all the DVDs are available on the likes of eBay, Amazon, and I would highly advise you check out this show, because it's great. It's really, really great. And yeah, I'm a bit biased because I grew up watching it, and yeah, I'm a bit biased because I'm a huge Indiana Jones fan. But if I could relive watching these episodes, at least some of these episodes for the first time, without a doubt, I would say yes to that. And I really hope that when it eventually comes onto Disney Plus, it finds an audience. It finds a new audience, that people discovering this show for the first time. But I don't know if it will. I think Disney have missed the mark with that now. Or should I say Lucasfilm have missed the mark with that. And there may be some very legitimate reasons as to why it's not on Disney Plus in the UK. Yeah, if I'm going to think level-headed here, which I haven't really been doing, if I'm going to think level-headed, there might be some legitimate reasons, like licensing with music, especially an episode like The Mystery of the Blues. There might be some problems with licensing, there might be some problems with an agreement with Paramount because they distribute the show. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. There's nowhere that's saying what's going on with the Young Indiana Jones show, but I really hope it eventually ends up on Disney Plus. Please, and when it does, I will make another podcast on it. Most likely. I'm not gonna guarantee that, just in case I am doing other stuff by then. But if I'm not doing other stuff and it does come onto Disney Plus, I will make a podcast on it. I promise. I will do. Because it's a great show. And it's a huge shame it's not on Disney Plus, at least in the UK anyway. Because I do think it would have been great for people to discover all these almost hidden Indiana Jones adventures before experiencing Indy's final adventure in the next couple of days. Leading up to the release of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. But it wasn't to be. It is what it is. Because it's so adventurous as well. Sorry, I just wanted to mention that. I really wanted to mention the fact that each episode of the show has its own adventure going on in it. And I love this show. Love it, love it, love it. And I'm so sad that it's not on Disney Plus yet. Because they missed opportunity, especially the release of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny very soon. But anyway, that's it for the podcast today. Much of this podcast is just me complaining about the fact that Young Indiana Jones isn't on Disney Plus yet. But I did want to also talk about Young Indiana Jones as well, whilst I'm talking about all the other Indiana Jones movies on the podcast at the moment, just because this is where it fits in the release order. It went Raiders, Temple of Doom, Last Crusade, then it was Young Indiana Jones show, and then about 20 odd years later, around 20 years later anyway, there was the release of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and then 15 years later, we now get the release of Dial of Destiny. So that's why I did want to do this podcast. Pardon me, nonetheless. But, I want it to be a bit more of a fun podcast, though, instead of me just going why is it not on Disney Plus yet? And knowing my luck, by the way, one thing I haven't mentioned yet, and this will be the last thing I mention, knowing my luck, it will be on Disney Plus by the time I put this podcast out. And if it is, that's great. I don't mind looking like a fool again in this instance, but it probably won't be at the same time, because it's the way of the world. Hey, anyway, guys, thank you as always for watching or listening to this podcast, and I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, if you've seen Young Indiana Jones and you know if there's a way to access it or watch it in the UK on any sort of streaming service, let me know in the comment section below or in the feedback section on Spotify or whatever. And anyway, yes, thank you so much for watching, and if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like, subscribe on this podcast, and look forward to many more podcasts coming very soon on this channel. Got a couple more indie podcasts coming, a couple more podcasts on the topic of Indiana Jones coming before the release of Indiana Jones The Dial of Destiny. But until then, guys, thank you so much for watching and listening, and I suppose that's it, so I will see you guys again soon, but bye for now. Bye. That's the tune for the Young Indiana Jones. So I don't know why, but I decided to sing it at the end of this podcast. Yeah. Anyway, so this is it. See you guys again soon, but bye for now. Bye.